Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel for day 1799 of our daily content grind. Hearing that number, I really should have something really special lined up for tomorrow's video for the big 1800 milestone. I don't. As the chips fall, that just happens to land on a day I'm scheduled to post a sponsor review for YOLO Park of their new AMK Pro 07 Ironhide toy. So if you want to see how that one came out, please tune in. Please give that one a watch. YOLO Park does pay attention to the numbers those videos do. So when I post those reviews, I do appreciate anyone going and giving them a watch, because that does help me out. So thank you. Thank you for the support. Thank you for watching my stuff. But today we're going to do something a little bit weird and different. And this is one of those classic TJOmega-isms where I was researching one idea I had for a video that I thought was really fun, but I kept hitting certain circumstances and situations that made me go, there's a different video here. Let me switch gears now, and we'll do this instead. So I'll get to what that was shortly. For now, all you need to know is that we are talking about Maximus, specifically every Transformer that included Maximus as a name. Obviously, Fortress Maximus on the front here, that one is the very first. But similar to a lot of those like tacked on names, Supreme, Prime, etc., those would end up getting tacked on to other characters later on to just designate them as bigger, badder, whatever. So we end up with those a lot through Transformers fiction, and I was actually really surprised how many times it had come up and how many I had never heard of. They're all over the place. So I'm going to take you through all the ones that I could find on TF Wiki, and that stuff, obviously, we have to talk the original. Now, depending on what fiction you ingested, or which one you prefer, this is all over the place. So in the G1 cartoon, we only have one appearance of Fortress Maximus himself in robot mode, because it's Cerebros with Spike as his headmaster that's in charge of things. And Cerebros is very reluctant to fight, really just kind of wants to be shut down so he can never be used as a weapon again. It's kind of lame for a character that's supposed to be like your biggest, most expensive toy you've ever done. Doesn't exactly like instill like super cool character I gotta go buy, or does it? In the Marvel comics, it's Spike in control of things, and he is Fortress Maximus. And while there is still a reluctance to go into combat, the character is far more present, and the character is, frankly, far smaller than in the G1 cartoon, which does mean Fort Max himself is on page a lot more often than any on-screen appearance of the character. It does make a little bit more sense, so they can actually interact as Fortress Maximus. And then you have Headmasters, where Fort Max was the replacement for Rodimus Prime. Galvatron blew up Cybertron. Fun little bits about Transformers fiction. Japanese stories get crazy. But while Rodimus is off trying to find a new homeworld for Cybertron, conveniently taking most of the 86 cast with him because they aren't on the store shelves anymore, he leaves command of the Autobots to Fortress Maximus. So he basically is our Prime stand-in, and as such, is very present in the show and basically just doing the Prime stuff of leading the Autobots to victory, etc. There it is again, Cerebros, that is the main face of Fortress Maximus, rather than the tiny head. It's a lot. It's a lot to take in. This doesn't even get into variations like IDW Fort Max. We're not getting into that today. So, we move on. Let's go through all of these, because we know there are lots of variations of this particular Maximus. There's Grand Maximus, who is depicted as the younger brother of Fortress Maximus from the Headmaster series. He is in the Master Force series as a pretender like the others, but he prefers being in space and he prefers the isolation. So usually he can be found sailing the stars as part of Metalhawk's crew. But he usually is standoff, hands off. I'm going to be floating in space now. Call me if you need me type. What's fun about this one is that despite being the exact same toy, despite being a repaint of that figure, he does have a lot more interaction because he's much smaller in the cartoon. Yeah, it's a little bit funny how they work the scaling here, but keep in mind, this was the era where our Autobot commanders and our main cast started getting larger and larger as Japan really liked making the robots really, really big. So, like, a Fortress Maximus is, like, still twice as tall as a God Jinrai. So, that gives you, like, some idea where the scale is supposed to be. They didn't quite stick to that. But, at the very least, he was around. There's more to him than I assumed there would be. And then we have Brave Maximus, who is the other one that American fans would typically jump to. This was like the import toy to get when we first had an internet to communicate with each other on. And it was glorious, you know? It's a really good-looking repaint of Fortress Maximus, and they've actually added a lot of deco that makes it look more like a city. Like little light-up, well, not light-up, but lit-up windows painted in, etc. In show, this is... how to describe this? He's more a force of nature than he is an actual transformer. So Cerebros himself is just operating off of a program. He is not autonomous to any degree that we can find. And that does make him easier to manipulate. However, the higher up the food chain you go on Fortress Maximus, the more innocent and pure of heart you have to be in order to actually command him. So, yes, the Autobots are the only ones that can really get reaction out of Cerebros. But once he's Fort Max, the only one he responds to are humans. Specifically, he is a lot more susceptible to being controlled by children. So, it's an interesting way of, like, working the human cast back into the show. By the way, you're now in control of, like, the biggest, most powerful weapon in the universe. Have fun with that, Koji. But no, like, he's really, unfortunately, like, a non-character because of it. Because he is most just following program and just following whatever human is commanding at the time. So it's a little bit more boring, but a cool-looking redo of the character. So, there's also such thing as a Neo Brave Maximus. This was seen in the Legends comics for the current run of toys, and it's a virtual redeco of the Titans Return Fortress Maximus. It doesn't exist as a toy. Neo Brave Maximus is really just there to have that version of the character present, even though storyline-wise he is somewhere else and cannot actually be there. It's a really weird story quirk, but again, this is the Legends comic. All of the story is weird quirks. So you take what you get. Now, we're going to start getting into obscure because there is another recolor that we need to talk about. And that is Paritus Maximus. We originally called him Christmas Maximus because of the color scheme, but among a million other things that were canonized or explained, Vector Prime, with the Ask Vector Prime segment, actually came through and gave us a proper name. So we don't have a whole lot on him because, like a lot of the additional kind of like NPC style characters in Armada, he really is just there borrowing a G1 model for the sake of not having to come up with a new design, and he's in and out pretty quick, almost a cameo appearance of a weird Fortress Maximus recolor. All he really does is give Hotshot the assignment of watching after Wheeljack and being his mentor. Ironic because Hotshot needed a mentor of himself later on in the series in Scavenger. Okay, we'll let a kid who needs a mentor be a mentor to an even younger kid. Oh man, he turned into a Decepticon. How did that happen? Man, couldn't have foreseen that. I thought that would go swimmingly. Now, that is it for the Fort Max varieties, but we have other Maximi that we need to talk about. Energon gave us 3. So we have Superion Maximus, Bruticus Maximus, and Constructicon Maximus, who has also been referenced as Devastator Maximus later on. I was going to include that entry as well, but it really is just in reference to this version. So here are your Energon combiners, the first time they've done proper 5-piece combiners since G1, and in show, they are all Super Energon powered, meaning they are more powerful than your standard Transformers. But they were tasked with guarding the Super Energon and basically existed in a stalemate that went on for so long, they rusted and corroded into essentially solid and essentially living statues, which is a really weird story beat to hit. But again, this is Energon we're talking about. They didn't have the strongest story to begin with. To fall in line with Megatron, Superion Maximus obviously is the one who escapes and joins up with the Autobots. These are also kind of hard to explain character-wise, especially because the individual combiner limbs are just drones, essentially. Like, there's implication that they might be alive, but for the most part, we don't actually see them talk. We don't see them in robot mode. They exist solely to be limbs. We almost never even saw these characters combine either. They would turn into light and then merge together, which is lame. We saw combination sequences for that one really cool, weird episode, and that was it. But no, these guys are an interesting batch. They almost exist like separately from anything else in Energon because they solely exist to battle each other. And then you just have being like hopelessly outnumbered Superion here. Oh, but don't worry, there was a 4th. There was also Dauntless Maximus in this series. Oh. Right, Megatron scrapped him before he could wake up. So that happened. So now the stalemate makes sense. It was a 2-on-2. That didn't hold up very well. Okay, so let's see, moving on. Who else do we have? Oh, well, I guess if we're going to talk about that combiner, there is the combiner that is also was at one time named Maximus. We had to change it, though. Don't Google it. In fact, like, we pretty much know the story on this one. It's not actually named Maximus anymore for unfortunate reasons. So we're going to make note of it. We're not going to discuss it. We're going to move on. But we're going to stick to combining Maximus. Here is Optimus Maximus. We just keep rolling them in, don't we? So in Combiner Wars, we have the incomplete Optimus Prime combiner made from his default toy with basically just, you know, whatever aerial bots you have lying around are supposed to be the limbs there. Hey, Nexus Primes, modern day Nexus Prime says hi from the future, by the way. But no, once you get the Battle Core Optimus, now you have the perfected combiner Optimus Prime. He is designed to work with the 84 cast limbs, which makes sense. And then if you want a little bit of 86, Rodimus can actually become his chess piece as well. And I still laugh at the idea of these combiner characters becoming chess pieces for the combiners, because that's your friend. That's your friend you are now using as a... I was going to say meat shield, but they're made of metal, but a metal shield is just a shield. I don't know. I don't know how to parse that particular observation. It's still silly to me to stick your friend on your chest and go, okay, hit me with whatever you got. I ain't afraid. Yes, he's crying. Don't ignore that. We're in the middle of something here. He'll get over it. But no, fictionally, this one doesn't have anything. Partially because, well, Devastation probably would have done something with him, but, you know, we didn't get a Devastation 2, so that never happened. We do have another Optimus Maximus, though, and it's this hideous thing. It's an assault frame. It is not necessarily a character itself. Once again, similar to the Nexus variety. I am only including this because it is another Maximus thing that we can account for. But in and of itself, it is not a character. It is essentially scaffolding designed to look like Optimus Prime and have enough gaps in it to hold a few other Transformers of the smaller size. For those who have been around the channel for a long time, it's a toy that was going to be plastic addict destined. Had life not gotten in the way and taken all that time away from me. We might still get to that someday. I would like to. I hate that thing. I hate that thing so much. All right, sticking into the Primes area of this segment, we have Sentinel Maximus. This was essentially Optimus Prime for the BotCon storyline pre-FunPub era. So you have a combination here. You have Ape Link, who is, kind of follows like your heroic leader maximal footprint. And then you have Primal Prime, who was essentially like, remember the frame that Quickstrike used to take over Optimal Optimus in Season 3 of Beast Wars? It is that frame given life by the Vok in order to be a defender on the planet because Tarantulas is around still. He's Vok powered now. We need something to hold him off. So in comes Primal Prime. Well, as the story goes, Primal Prime gets so badly injured that Ape Link gives up his spark to fuse with Primal Prime's, creating another dual spark entity. So Beast Wars really liked its dual spark characters. And that gives us Sentinel Maximus, a retooling of the Overload toy from Armada. And it looks super cool. Like, I always really did like the look of this. And working Ape Link into Hyperlink, the Minicon unit, is also a nice little nod. Man, storyline-wise, he does get treated like Optimal Optimus a lot. He loses a lot of fights because, well, they have to write him out. He's too powerful otherwise. And toy-wise, he was super annoying to get. Like, there were so many problems getting this toy out to actual collectors. The company heading, I think it was 3H at the time, heading BotCon could not fulfill these, so Hasbro had to step in and handle it themselves. And that's probably a major reason why the license got stripped and taken over to FunPub instead, among other problems. Another one that here's one I don't have a whole lot, but it finishes off the Prime section of the Maximus. Shreddus Maximus, who is just the head. He's just the head of the primitive skateboarding version of Titan's Return Power Master Optimus Prime. That lovely black and gold repaint. Yeah, just the head is called Shreddus Maximus, just for like the radical 90s joke going on. Otherwise, not a lot of character to him, so we don't really have to spend a lot of time. Here's one that might throw you off. Yes, it's the last Autobot, but the name he has is also Optimus Maximus. So, character-wise, he is the last vestiges of Primus left behind for the day that Primus could no longer guide his children himself. He basically stands as the last line of defense Cybertron had before Primus went completely dormant. And he makes a big show of the last issue of the original Transformers Marvel comic book run. He is heavily, well, let's rephrase this. Vector Prime is heavily inspired by the last Autobot, which you can probably pick up on even from this angle. But on top of that, you will occasionally find the last Autobot in the mix of the 13 Primes as Optimus Maximus. Given his ancient nature, that does kind of make sense. But because of comics, now movies, like Transformers 1, he doesn't get to join that pantheon anymore. But he was one of those stand-in Primes. He's like the bench filler, like pinch hitter Prime, if you ever need one. Now, we are going to end off on the most obscure of the obscure. Okay, and there's not a whole lot to talk about on any of these. This is just for your fun, informational purposes. The weird stuff I like to save toward the end as a thank you for all the people who stuck around through the entire 20-minute video. You now get to see the really weird stuff I found, like Paritus Maximus here. So, IDW, completely original design, obviously no toy. So, Paritus Maximus is a devout believer in the Knights of Cybertron and a opponent of ratioism, which is basically the functionist mentality of your alt mode decides your lot in life. If you are an excavator, you are a construction robot, and that's all you're allowed to do. Like that mentality, the one that kind of created the Decepticons in the first place. So yeah, he stands as a big opponent to that philosophy. He doesn't get to participate much in the story. He mostly exists. So we know that there are people fighting against this idea and that it is not entirely popular, but it's what they're stuck with type of situation. So yeah, essentially protester. He's a Cybertronian protester. Now we're getting into the original reasons why I actually did this video. So, we need Holographic Maximus now. The original concept that started this whole rabbit hole was I wanted to do a top 10 of Transformers who technically didn't exist. And this guy is nothing but a hologram who appeared in Heavy Metal War to intimidate Devastator and distract him momentarily. So yeah, this is just Hound's creation. However, we do have like actual story behind this now. Again, it's Aspector Prime, but also a little bit of comic book added to this as well. The design is, according to our new lore, actually a real Autobot who existed at one time. Holographic Maximus is an ancient hero of Cybertron. In modern comics, he mostly appears almost as like fun cameo stuff. Is one of those characters that no one's ever really done anything with because obviously there's no real foundation to him. He was literally just a trick in the original cartoon. Another one who technically does not exist is Zarak Maximus, because the only time you ever see him is in the animation for the commercials. And it's actually really, really rare for the toy commercials to depict anything that isn't a buyable toy. This one, it's because it was the Micromaster era. They didn't have large, threatening Transformers to show the size of the Micromasters canonically. So they just invented someone. And it's invented. They kind of hodgepodged his pieces from other character models and just kind of slapped him together like a weird, like, I got bored and took out my Bionicles day. So he's got bits of Cerebros, he's got bits of Fortress Maximus, but it does seem like most of his design comes from Scorponok, hence why Zarak Maximus became the name. So yeah, it technically doesn't exist. Technically. Because there's no real character, toy, or anything behind it. It's literally just a like one of the only original characters the commercials ever came up with. And then there was the weirdest one I found, because all of these others have some kind of grandiose nature to them, right? You know, they are stand-ins for Optimus Prime, upgrades for Optimus Prime, really powerful ancient combiners, or Titans. You know, Maximus is a name reserved for only the most powerful or legendary of Transformer characters. And then you have Blue Maximus. Oh boy. So Blue Maximus was the intended repaint of Ransack from the Revenge of the Fallen Scout line. It got canceled like a lot of those later repaints did, which is unfortunate, because a lot of those toys were really nice, and I wouldn't mind having like color options for them. So Blue Maximus is actually named after a World War I movie called Blue Max, and it's what you imagine. It would have been blue and white, but this shot from the black and white instructions that made it online, and one CG render showing the blue and white color placement is all we actually have of its existence. So this one, again, technically does not exist, but we will remember it fondly. What could have been. So there you go. That's everyone I could find that is named Maximus, and there's a lot more than I expected. And a lot of their origins are really weird, but I don't know, it's kind of fun to learn about weird things like that sometimes. It's what the channel is for. Information you never thought you wanted, and probably still don't want, but I'm here to tell it to you. So, thank you everyone for watching. As always, I deeply appreciate it. If you like this kind of weird video, you are free to join the Patreon and get Discord access as well as exclusive uploads, but you are also welcome to just leave a one-time tip in Ko-fi. I don't plug this stuff often, so let me get away with it just once in a blue moon. But as always, thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time.
Hello everyone, I am Astral Agent Magnetar, a tokusatsu VTuber, and I am streaming 4 times a week over on Twitch, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday afternoons, and a special late night one on late Friday/early Saturday. So come watch, come hang out, and let's make an impact together.